Okay, so our next guest, we'll move right along. Our next guest is a poet and an author, and she will be at the National Black Book Festival as one of the participating authors.
Yay.
Yay. And her name is J.W. Young. So we're waiting on her to come on screen. And when she comes on, and actually, our final guest is also one of the participating authors. So um, you'll get to meet, if you get to come to the festival, you'll get a chance to meet both of them. So I see that the camera, okay, there you go, there you go. Hello, okay.
Hello, hello,
Um,
ladies.
hello. So
Hello,
welcome
hello.
to Black Authors Matter TV, J.W. Young.
Mm, Thank you very
You just
much.
have,
Thanks for
you
having
just
me. I
have,
really appreciate it.
Well,
yeah, you
thank you
just
for
have
being here.
H on the screen. So uh that's so people will know who you are. Your name is J.W. Young. So first of all, tell us how you became a poet and started writing poetry, and what kind of poetry do you write? Just give us some backstory on that.
Sure, sure. Well, yes, my name is JW Young. I actually, at a very young age, I left my version of paradise to live in I was sent to live in a polar opposite type of town in the South. I began writing poetry during that time when I was really young to cope with racism and sexual abuse and being alone. And it was really a means to express myself and to stop hiding in my pain. So in about my early 20s, I decided to move from that place and create a better life for myself. So I left the violence, I left the trauma of my school years behind. I packed up my car and, I admit it was tough on the road, but nothing really prepared me for what was ahead, really difficult situations, living in dangerous areas, lots of homelessness, gun blasts coming through the windows, those kinds of things. But all the while, I had to endure an abusive and violent marriage. So anytime I was caught writing, an argument would ensue. And so a lot of my writing at that time was destroyed. So again, it was just a coping mechanism. It continued on through my marriage. And because a lot of the writing was destroyed, censorship is a real central theme of my book and my poems and my writings, especially at that time period. So I self-published my book of poems and writings that I had, survived that time. And that became my first book, Marriage 2001, A Bruised Odyssey, which was released this year. I self-published that, which was real accomplishment. In that time period, I lost my press to represent the unheard, the unsung, and the unpublished. And I actually have now transitioned my writing away from trauma focused nonfiction to a speculative fiction, horror fiction, which I think is a positive reflection of the changes I'm making in my life now. So I'm actually weaving in like recitative poetry and other things into my fiction works. And in the last few months, my works have been recognized, the top 5 finalists in the Hugo Berge Fellowship for Spoken Word Poetry. Also, I was featured in the inaugural Juneteenth issue of the Flavor Zine with a poem that I wrote for young Black women and young Black girls. And I was also recently invited to the Los Angeles Midsummer Poetry Fest, and I've got a lot of book shows and appearances coming up as I'm writing my next books, which is number one, a cookbook, but also the horror fiction and crime fiction collection. So a lot going on about how I got here to
A
poetry. It's
cookbook?
been my voice, it's been my vehicle, and it's my voice of endurance. And now I'm using it to kind of be a window of reflection into where I'm going and changing away from the trauma to now a new beginning.
But now, did I hear you say cookbook? That's a pretty big departure, isn't it?
Yeah, I was writing a lot of things when I was in that 20 plus year relationship. Everything that I have now that I'm saying that I'm going to write, I started it back in 2000, 2001. And so, yeah, cookbook was just another thing that I did to cope and help me heal. It was so comforting. And I learned a new way of cooking because I'm gluten-free, dairy-free as well. And so the cookbook that's coming out is all about, Southern cooking, Louisiana classics, gumbo, jambalaya,
Love
honey
it.
fried chicken, but it's all like gluten-free, dairy-free, and sugar-free. So yeah, it's a bit of a departure, but
And
it's
taste free.
representative. Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's what was going on at the time. So
Right, it's a taste free. We just well, Rhonda's from New Orleans.
Yeah, I'm from New Orleans, so
And
my ears
yeah,
perked up when I
Oh,
heard
yeah,
that.
she did. And
all
I
right,
went
that's
there.
great.
When did I get? That was the end of July when I went there and
Oh,
had the
wow.
amazing Louisiana food. We have a lot of
Okay.
Louisiana food in Houston, in Texas in general, because I think
Sure.
half the state of Louisiana moved here over time between
Right.
Katrina and just proximity. So we have lots of
Uh-huh.
Louisiana food. But I will say, when you eat it in New Orleans, it has a different.
It's a
Uh,
whole different vibe.
it is.
It
It's
is.
authentic. You can and I asked for the authentic restaurants. So Rhonda, she took me to a couple. Then someone else, I forgot to tell you, I ate at Fleur de Lis or Florida.
Fleur de Lis?
Ooh.
Yes, I ate
Okay.
breakfast there on Sunday before I left, and that was good.
Oh, okay.
It was
I
walking
haven't eaten
distance
there.
from the
Usually
hotel.
when I go to breakfast in New Orleans, I like to go to the Ruby Slipper.
Okay. Yeah, it was
Ooh,
in walking
a good
distance from
one.
the hotel. So that's why I ended up, it was like 2 blocks away. So they directed me there. And it was good. It was good,
Okay.
good food, good service. But now you have for
Mm.
you to have been writing about trauma and all of the things that you said you experienced, you have a big old smile on your face. And uh, there must be something internal that allows you to smile through all you've been through.
Yes, absolutely. It was an emotional journey. I mean, all the writings that were penned in the book, whether they were poems or journal entries, they were, under duress. And so it's not really reflective like a memoir. So because it was my coping strategy back then, it was so freeing to actually publish it. I was still dealing with it mentally. There's a lot of focus out there on mental health issues. But you're just kind of ruminating on it, chewing on it like a cow, and you never really get rid of it. You never digest it. You never really let it go. And so the smile on my face has really just been starting my own publishing company, unpacking all those journals, all these fiction works in progress along the way. They've been packed away for decades, brown-eared and, just old line type from, the 1990s. So when I finally decided to share and publish my experiences again, it was like seeing them for the first time, but it freed me. It was so healing. And so I've now connected with others who are use journaling as a healing vehicle. And so that's a smile on my face to have known that I endured it. The book is proof. And now I get to share the experiences with others to hopefully maybe they can avoid some of those same situations or find that there are some coping strategies until you can just get out of that situation, which is exactly what's necessary. And a lot of times, intimate partner violence, it affects 1 in 3 women, whether it's physical abuse, emotional abuse, or mental abuse.
Yes.
So a lot of people are going through it. And so to be able to be here today, that's a smile like no other. I can't even begin to share that with you to survive. And so to actually have my voice and to reclaim my voice is really, that's where that smile is from. And I know that there's someone out there that may be struggling with the same thing. And maybe I'm a bright light so they can also see the end, that there is a smile and a beautiful day at the end of it all.
Well, those are really heartfelt words. Um, do you, is your poetry like, for lack of a better term, a memoir in terms of your experience, or does it reflect more your hopefulness to get beyond your experience?
I think it's a good mixture of both. There's times in there where it's, for example, it was kind of a blessing when I get to put my pen to the paper at the time. So I have an example, like a poem that's called Trying Again. And it begins with, "This is the third time I've left. Is it my destiny to return?" Where I get to ponder these questions. I was really isolated in that situation. So the poems is both, it's my experiences for survival and kind of my outlet of frustration, but that hope, it's always that hope that I'll get through the next day, or I've learned something, or I can apply myself, positively in this marriage, in this relationship, to the point where you turn the corner and I realize in the book that I've got to get out. But yeah, it's me constantly trying to deal with the situations of raising my son, reclaiming myself, trying to see myself my way out of this relationship and truly to become self-sufficient. So a lot of those were just those things, just really dealing with it.
Mm. So do you perform your poetry, or is it mostly for people to read?
I've not yet performed my poetry. That's a wonderful question. One of the things, as I mentioned, I was transitioning from this trauma literature and trauma poetry to now like speculative fiction, crime fiction, horror fiction. And so what I've found is I've begun to weave poetry into my fiction. So, for example, I just wrote this short story collection. It's called The Package. And it's this frustrated main character woman who is very upset with the neighborhood, and she goes on she's getting ready to go on a killing spree. She's so out of it, and so the books opens with her reciting this poetry saying, I know this is brutal, I know this is gruesome, but it's that's how I've kind of connected the poetry and kind of that trauma aspect to now taking it to fiction where, the intent is to put fear or instill fear in others. So now I'm kind of weaving both together. It's really fun. And it was really nice to hear some feedback from these really neat fellowships where they're saying, that's a really good way that's a lot of visual imagery, an interesting way, a diverse way to interweave those topics. And also talking about having a conscientious distance between trauma and reflection, and so that's really important for me too. But yeah, that's kind of helped me turn the corner.
Mhm. I love the thought of weaving storytelling techniques in your poetry. Because as poets, we are storytellers as well. And I think it's a great way to kind of hook your listener or reader, whichever one, whether you're doing spoken word or not. But it's a good way to hook them and to keep and for them to actually better hear your message.
Right. And so that's a new venture for me, is to actually take it to the point where I perform it or I'll do spoken word. I've never done that yet. And so this recitative poetry introduction in the horror book was my very first time to go, oh, wait, that should be really, something that should be said out loud. And as I started to do a little bit of research on that methodology, it's an operatic technique, and it was originally used in Porgy and Bess, one of the greatest American operas of all time. And so that recitative manner of poetry, that's new for me. So I can't wait to take that to the stage and see where it blossoms, and maybe I'll take that next step to doing, one person play, or, maybe just, do the poetry as a spoken word performance.
Hmm. Yeah, I recently read a book. It was called One Summer in Savannah by Tora Harris or Tara Harris. She was on the show a few months back, and I read her book. And in her book, one of the main characters, well, he wasn't really a main character. I would say he was a secondary character. But anyway, it was a father, an elderly father that was suffering from dementia or like early onset Alzheimer's. And but he was a poet. He taught English. And so a lot of his verbal communication was in poems. And so she wove the
Oh, wow.
poetry throughout the novel. I had never read a book that did that before, and she
Wow.
was successful with it. So it's out there. Uh,
Nice, yes.
mhm. Yeah, that was his main way of communicating, and he was declining in health, so uh, he
That's
was able to weave
beautiful.
that in there. And I hate that you're coming to the festival, and one of our managers is a horror writer, but she can't be there
Oh,
this year. She had
wow.
got her dates mixed up. I would have loved to introduce you to her, and I will still do that. I'll send her your information. Her name is
Thank
Rhonda.
you. Yeah.
Also,
All right. Look
Yeah,
Rhonda
forward to
Jackson
that.
Garcia. So
All right.
she does horror. She
yeah.
started off in
Rhonda's good
romance.
people too.
Yeah, she
Oh,
is. But
good.
she travels all over. She's been to Europe with the horror and speculative fiction, that whole thing.
Hmm.
And I think she
Nice.
teaches English too
Oh, wow.
at the community college level. But she's really into the horror. When she does her table display, she'll have some fake candles and all the
Yeah, it
motifs.
looks really scary. It's all black and red and
Yeah.
everything.
It has
That's
that
great.
horror motif. It's a whole different like
Yeah.
group of people. And when we had a display at the mall a couple of
Mhm.
times where it was several of us, and she had her display, and we all had our displays. But people who read horror, they knew to come to her table, and she
Wow.
said, my people know me. It's a whole thing. I don't read horror because it would scare me. I wouldn't be able to sleep. But
Right.
but if there's a market out there for it, and we've had several horror authors on the show.
Yes.
But it's a market. It's not a lot of Black people
Mhm.
writing in that genre,
Right. This
but
is
there's a
true.
market for it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to turn that corner. I don't want to be the trauma lit chick, I want to be, that.
Not the
Yeah.
trauma lit chick.
Well,
I've grown, I've evolved.
well, it's you are right. There are women living in fear, in constant fear, on the edge.
It
And
is
it's
true.
it might not be physical abuse necessarily. For some people, it's verbal, really the psychological, it's and that can be very terrorizing because you
It
don't
is.
know what the person's going to say or do or when or what's going to set them off. You can try to
Mhm.
be compliant or whatever. It seems like the more compliant some women are, the more it sets the person off, you know.
It's very true in my experience. Absolutely. It's never enough, and so the line, first of all, it blurs and then it moves and then there's no more line in terms of boundaries. And so, that's you just have to recognize that and just kind of self-preserve. But yeah.
Yeah. So without sharing, personal information, what helped you finally become free of that?
I believe it was a couple of things. First, first and foremost, getting out of the situation. It is kind of a life and death situation. No matter how long it goes on, and as you said, it does get progressively worse. If you accept it, then that person has more control. In fact, recently, for me, one way to turn the corner was to think about my inspirations. And so I needed a voice, I needed an outlet to initiate change. So I always appreciated the lyrical expressions of artists like Nina Simone and Curtis Mayfield, and even Hunter S. Thompson's gonzo journalism inspired my poetry significantly. And I've been reading the autobiography of Frederick Douglass about the lack of a freedom of expression because that kept me bonded in a very violent marriage. And I wasn't able to say what was going on or seek help or even publish my own books. And those were a cost to me in my life. And so essentially, when you can't express yourself, it changes how you think. And when you can't speak your mind, you begin to censor yourself. You're censoring your own thoughts internally. You're limiting your voice. You're limiting your position in life, and your self-worth and your values are affected too. So those kinds of inspirations helped me center and say, you know what, they did it. Nina endured, Frederick endured. My people didn't come this far for me to stumble, to be strong as they were, get back up on my feet. And then finally getting out of the relationship, but then becoming financially self sufficient is important too, because a lot of times in intimate partner violence, they will keep you financially stuck as well,
Yeah.
whether they rule the money or they demand the money or whatever, and so that was important for me too, to just, figure out what I did best in life and make a business out of it. And so, for me, it was writing to contribute to magazines. I contributed to homeless magazines, women's magazines, but then now starting a publishing company so that I can publish other underrepresented writers. That really motivated me to, publish and now keep going and really be a pillar in the industry to help others to have that voice that I needed so desperately, that helped me come out of that dark place too.
Yes.
Hmm. So you have
That's
other authors under
that's
your umbrella?
wonderful.
I just started reading and accepting submissions. I've got 2 submissions in, and they're both amazing. So I'm reading right now, looking to publish, if not an anthology of others this year, but 2 next year. One is another individual. He's a gay attorney out of the West Coast. He's been journaling since the 1980s, and he's got some big eye openers, bomb droppers, in his journals. And so it was so similar to what I've been through. So it was really exciting to consider his book, and I would love to launch that next year. So I'm actively looking and reading writers out there right now. So, very excited to publish others and give them a chance to express themselves, give them a chance that's not restricted, give them a chance to be a part of history and keep the record straight.
Well, Rhonda, since you published an anthology, you want to give her a couple of tips?
Sure.
Right.
Um, I guess I would say that every writer personality is a little different. And sometimes we fall into the trap of um, editing things to make it sound like how we would say it or how we would write it. And when we do that, sometimes we take away the voice of the person who submitted. So that's a habit that I had to break, and I didn't realize that was my habit until somebody pointed it out to me and said something was bothering me and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then I finally realized it's because this doesn't sound like me anymore. And all she had to do was say that to
Right.
me one time, and I never did that again. So I try to be very careful with that.
Right.
Yeah, just editing, but at the same time maintaining that voice. And then the other
Mhm.
thing is maybe staying true to what it is that you want to publish. Because it's very easy to get caught in the trap of, okay, I'm gonna publish all these people, so now I have 5 people under me. But if those 5 people don't align with the mission of my company, then I can lose myself.
Right.
So I think
Yeah,
those are
that's
2
very
things I can throw out
valuable.
there.
Oh, that's very valuable. That kind of echoes volumes out there to me and everybody watching this broadcast. So, that's kind of insight that we really value and appreciate. So thank you for that. It's
Well,
overwhelming, when you're trying to represent others, but I really appreciate that, it's also their art, so I'll
right,
consider
right.
that voice when we
Yeah.
we start thinking about how carefully we'll handle their art.
Exactly. You know, somebody trusted us with their work, and so we want to make sure that we live up to that trust.
Mhm.
So if you
Yeah,
could
for
give
sure.
any advice to women who are in challenging relationships where they're really um, being mistreated, what
Yeah,
what advice would you give? Because it sounds like you were there for a while. You
I
were in your
was.
relationship for a
I
while.
was several decades. So, I didn't feel like I didn't know anyone because of the isolation, and I never felt like I could ask for help and be safe to ask for help. So, my advice is take charge and take control, get help, don't stay. Uh, don't make excuses to stay either. I stayed way too long, as more than 2 decades. I had to rely on myself and then eventually my grown son to help me break free because it affects everyone. It was my son going, this isn't normal, And then, so you have to recognize the tools of control. You're not saving anyone by staying and enduring the abuse. And in fact, you're isolating yourself and you're
Right.
not allowing that beautiful help to come into your life. You also have to change your belief about yourself. A lot of times the negatives that you hear from that other partner are sometimes the things that are your best assets, so you want to shift the focus of belief about yourself. The long arm of trauma is oppressive. It can be very long lasting, but when you begin to heal, you begin to thrive. And so for me, it was starting my own business, entrepreneuring, help restore my sense of self. Now I'm looking at short story collections, cookbooks, poem collections, but you just have to first get out of the situation, preserve yourself, and then do what you do best and take care of yourself, right? And find what you do best. For me, I love to write. I became a writer. I started writing business documents, regulatory documents, anything that I could do to write and be a writer. And eventually now I'm a survivor entrepreneur. So I'd say, get out, preserve, and then find what you love to become financially free. And you'll be surprised. Like I said, entrepreneur and starting a business can really save your life. So
Beautiful
Well,
words. Love that.
those are, and I hope if anyone's out there that is experiencing trauma in a relationship, I hope JW's words help you. Because it's very debilitating. It can be life threatening. Some people really don't survive it, literally don't survive it. So,
literally.
you know, it starts with belief in yourself. As you said, you have to start believing in yourself and having a little bit of confidence. And that's not, it's easier said than done if you've been in something long term. So, so anyway, we look forward to seeing you at the festival. And you have
Thank
your
you.
book, and it's Marriage 2001. I love your book cover. Do you have a copy of your book handy that you can show the
I
audience?
do. I do. Let
Okay.
me grab one.
Okay.
See. Yes, I do. I do. So there is my book, Marriage 2001, A Bruised Odyssey. That's
Yeah.
my first book, published in February of this year and available on all the major outlets, Ingram, Amazon, and Drafted Digital, bookshop.org, everywhere, and on the website, unpublications.com. I'll be at my first national festival this year. I'm very excited to be and honored to be at the festival in Houston this year. Come out and see me. And I hope to have that cookbook in hand too. So watch for that.
Well,
Oh, okay.
congratulations. And
Thank
I will
you.
see you in Houston as well.
All
And we
right.
did put your link in the chat. So everybody get out there and support this venture. It's a very beautiful thing that you're doing. And I'm really proud of you for just taking all that you've experienced and channeling it in the way that you've done.
Thank you so much. It's such a blessing to hear those words and to be here to hear those words. And you guys are doing something so wonderful for our community. So thank you so much. And everyone out there, continue to tune in. This is how we stay together and grow together as a community at large. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. You have a wonderful evening.
All right. See
All
you in a
right.
few weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Can't wait. I'll be there.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.